Hey everyone, in this video, I'm going to show you how to change your spark plugs. It's a pretty simple process, but there are a few things you need to know before you get started. First, you'll need to gather some tools and materials. You'll need a socket wrench, a spark plug socket, a gap tool, and some new spark plugs. You'll also need to know the gap specification for your spark plugs. This information can be found in your owner's manual. Once you have all of your tools and materials, you can start changing your spark plugs. The first step is to remove the old spark plugs. To do this, you'll need to use the socket wrench and spark plug socket to loosen the spark plugs. Once the spark plugs are loose, you can remove them by hand. Once the old spark plugs are removed, you can install the new spark plugs. Make sure to gap the new spark plugs to the correct specification before you install them. To gap the spark plugs, you'll need to use the gap tool. Once the spark plugs are gapped, you can install them in the engine. Once the new spark plugs are installed, you can start your engine and check for leaks. If there are no leaks, you're all done. Changing your spark plugs is a pretty simple process, but it's important to do it correctly. If you're not sure how to do it, you can always take your car to a mechanic. Engine misfiring. This is the most common symptom of a faulty spark plug. It happens when the spark plug fails to ignite the air-fuel mixture in the cylinder, causing the engine to run rough and shake. Check engine light. The check engine light may come on if the spark plugs are not functioning properly. This is because the oxygen sensor detects unburned fuel in the exhaust, which indicates a problem with the combustion process. Car struggles to start. If your car is struggling to start, it could be due to faulty spark plugs. The spark plugs are responsible for igniting the air-fuel mixture, so if they are not working properly, the engine will not be able to start. Rough idling. If your car is idling rough, it could be a sign that the spark plugs are worn out or fouled. This is because the spark plugs are not providing a consistent spark, which can cause the engine to run unevenly. Poor acceleration. If your car is not accelerating as well as it used to, it could be due to faulty spark plugs. The spark plugs are responsible for igniting the air-fuel mixture, so if they are not working properly, the engine will not be able to produce as much power. Increased fuel consumption. If your car is using more fuel than usual, it could be a sign that the spark plugs are not functioning properly. This is because the spark plugs are not igniting the air-fuel mixture efficiently, which can cause the engine to use more fuel. Strong smell of fuel coming from exhaust. If you can smell a strong odor of fuel coming from your car's exhaust, it could be a sign that the spark plugs are not functioning properly. This is because the spark plugs are not igniting the air-fuel mixture completely, which can cause unburned fuel to be released into the exhaust. Prepare all necessary tools. Before you start changing your spark plugs, you will need to gather all of the necessary tools. This includes a spark plug socket, a ratchet, an extension, a torque wrench, and a gap gauge. Choose a flat work area. It is important to choose a flat work area to change your spark plugs. This will help to prevent the spark plugs from falling out of the engine bay. Disconnect the negative battery terminal. Before you start working on your car, it is important to disconnect the negative battery terminal. This will help to prevent you from getting shocked. Locate the spark plugs. The spark plugs are located on the top of the engine. They are usually covered by a spark plug wire or a coil pack. Remove the spark plug wires or coil packs. Once you have located the spark plugs, you will need to remove the spark plug wires or coil packs. Be careful not to damage the wires or coils. Remove the old spark plugs. Use the spark plug socket and ratchet to remove the old spark plugs. Be careful not to cross-thread the spark plugs when you remove them. Gap the new spark plugs. Before you install the new spark plugs, you will need to gap them. The gap is the distance between the center electrode and the ground electrode. The correct gap for your spark plugs will be listed in your car's owner's manual. Install the new spark plugs. Once the new spark plugs are gapped, you can install them in the engine. Be careful not to over-tighten the spark plugs. Reconnect the spark plug wires or coil packs. Once the new spark plugs are installed, You can reconnect the spark plug wires or coil packs. Connect the negative battery terminal. Once you have finished changing the spark plugs, you can reconnect the negative battery terminal. Start the engine and check for any leaks. If there are no leaks, you have successfully changed your spark plugs. This is crucial for safety. Spark plugs are located near the engine, which gets extremely hot when running. Working on a hot engine can lead to burns or other injuries. Wait at least 30 minutes after turning off the engine before attempting to change the spark plugs. Before you start, it's important to clean the area around the spark plugs. This will help prevent dirt and debris from falling into the engine when you remove the plugs. Use a brush or compressed air to remove any loose dirt, and then wipe down the area with a clean rag. This is especially important if you're working on a car with multiple spark plugs. Before you disconnect anything, take a picture or make a note of which wire goes to which spark plug. This will make it much easier to reconnect everything correctly later. It's best to remove and replace the spark plugs one at a time. This will help you keep track of which plug goes where, and it will also reduce the risk of accidentally dropping a plug into the engine. When removing a spark plug, use a spark plug socket and a ratchet to loosen it. Be careful not to over-tighten the new spark plug when you install it. Once you've removed a spark plug, take a moment to inspect it. Look for any signs of wear or damage, such as cracks, chips, or excessive wear on the electrodes. If you see any damage, replace the spark plug immediately. The gap between the electrodes of a spark plug is critical for proper ignition. If the gap is too small, the spark won't be strong enough to ignite the fuel. If the gap is too large, the spark will jump to the wrong place, causing misfires. Check the owner's manual for the correct gap specification for your car, and use a feeler gauge to adjust the gap if necessary. Once you've checked the gap, install the new spark plug by hand. This will help ensure that the threads are not cross-threaded. Once the plug is hand-tight, use a torque wrench to tighten it to the specification in the owner's manual. Over-tightening a spark plug can damage the threads in the cylinder head. This can lead to leaks and other problems. Be sure to follow the torque specifications in your owner's manual to ensure that the spark plugs are tightened correctly. After you've tightened the spark plugs, double-check that they are securely in place. You don't want a spark plug to come loose while you're driving. By following these tips, you can change your spark plugs safely and effectively.